To say the least, 2020 has been a rough year. So far this year, we've seen multiple hurricanes, which have spawned off dozens of tornadoes and caused massive flooding. We've even seen our first ever double hurricane in the Gulf Coast, where one spot was hit by two different hurricanes just a day apart. Pretty much the entire West Coast is on fire right now. We are seeing what is shaping up to be the worst fire season in US history. We've never seen this many forest fires before and seen so many of them get out of control and burn this much acreage before. We've seen the highest unemployment rate in United States history, protests and riots all across the country, and a pandemic that has killed almost 200,000 Americans so far this year, and will probably kill up to 300,000 to 400,000 before this thing's even over with. 2020 is absolutely going down as one of the crappiest years of many of our lifetimes. But if there is a silver lining to this year, it's that many people have finally opened up their eyes to the concept of prepping for emergencies. It's now pretty mainstream and really just seen as something practical that all Americans should be doing. And in fact, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, actually encourages all Americans to be preppers. They in fact have an entire checklist of items that they want all Americans to keep in their homes at all times. And since there's so many people just now getting into emergency preparedness, I thought I'd put together this video to help you out on your journey and give you my views of what the different stages of being a prepper are, what emergencies you should and should not be prepping for, and a few common mistakes I see a lot of new preppers make. When many people first get into prepping, it's very easy for them to get distracted by the fantasies and the more glamorous side of prepping. I see a lot of people where the first thing that they want to build is a bug out bag and they want to buy a machete and a crossbow. And it's all nonsense. None of that stuff is actually going to help you out in a real emergency, and that is not where I recommend that you start on your prepping journey. Where I recommend that you start prepping is for whatever is the most likely scenario to occur to you and your family. And what that is may be dictated by what region of the country that you live in. So if you're in the southeast, the first thing that you should start prepping for is hurricanes. And hurricanes oftentimes spawn off tornadoes and also cause mass flooding. Now when those floodwaters recede, they then leave a biological threat as well, because the flood waters can cause mold buildup in your home, as well as leave dead fish and animal carcasses behind as the flood waters come back. With hurricanes, you're also going to see long-term power outages, anywhere from a day to a few days up to a week or even longer than that. You may also see food shortages in your community as well, especially if your local grocery store was heavily impacted by the hurricane. So if you're in the southeast or even the east coast, this is the most likely devastating disaster to occur and where you should start prepping. If you live in the northern states, then you need to be prepared for blizzards. With blizzards, you obviously have to be prepared for the freezing cold weather, but also long-term power outages that may last several weeks or even months, and you may even have to shelter in place for several weeks at a time. If you live in the western states, then you may want to prepare for earthquakes and wildfires. And with wildfires, your priority is to build a go bag that has all your important documents and cash and your emergency evacuation plan with multiple routes and multiple destinations planned out ahead of time. Now, luckily, many of these natural disaster scenarios have a lot of overlap in what supplies that you need to be prepared for them, and many of them have the exact same solution for how to survive them, and that is that you shelter in place. So lock yourself in your home and don't leave for several days. It seems simple, but that really is the right course of action for many, many natural disasters and emergencies. And so if you are new to prepping, this is where I first recommend that you focus on having enough supplies in your home that if a natural disaster occurred, you could shelter in place and ride it out for at least 3 days. And I recommend that you start with FEMA's 3-day emergency supply kit. So on their website, they literally have a checklist of items that they want all Americans to keep in their homes at all times to be prepared for any number of natural disasters. And many of these are easy items for you to acquire that you may already have. So things like flashlights, extra batteries, and a first aid kit. And I'm not going to go into the exact details of the kit right now, but I do have an entire video breaking down every single item in this kit and giving you multiple examples of each item. And I'll link to that video at the end of this one. So building your 3-day emergency supply kit is what I see as the first milestone in your emergency preparedness journey. So after you have enough food, water, and supplies for you to shelter in place for 3 days, the next milestone I want you to focus on is 2 weeks. Have enough food, water, and supplies that you could not leave your house for 2 weeks and you'd be perfectly fine. Now, going from 3 days to 2 weeks worth of supplies is not that big of a difference, right? You're still using the same first aid kit and same flashlights. As far as supplies go, maybe the only thing you need to do is add a few more batteries. The tricky part is going from 3 days worth of food and water up to 2 weeks worth of food and water. And at this point is where I recommend you start investing in something like this. So this is a bucket that has 60 servings of freeze-dried meals, and the food inside this bucket will last 25 years. And something like this may cost you $100 or so. But that is one of the easiest ways to go from 3 days worth of food all the way up to 2 weeks worth of food. So after you have 2 weeks worth of preps, I'd say the next milestone is having 1 month's worth of preps. So enough food, water, and supplies that you and your entire family could shelter in place for an entire month if you had to. Now, to get to 1 month's worth of supplies, you obviously could buy more of those freeze-dried buckets of food, but you also need to reevaluate some of the gear and items that you have as well. For example, when you get to this point, it becomes a little impractical to have that much water stored in your home. Not all of us have enough room in our home to store 30 days of water for our entire family. And that's why I recommend at this point you add some sort of water filtration system to your preps. So you could take dirty water from outdoors, filter it, purify it, and then have clean drinking water for you and your family. Batteries are also going to become a concern at this point as well, and you absolutely could buy just a massive boatload of batteries, but they do have a shelf life as well. Batteries do go bad, and that's why I recommend at this point you start looking into reusable batteries and some sort of solar charger for you to charge those batteries. And it's at this stage that I'd also recommend that you start considering investing in a firearm for home defense, and also investing time in learning firearm safety, maintenance, and cleaning. So now that you've got 1 month's worth of supplies, the next milestone is going to be 3 months worth of supplies. It's actually pretty easy to achieve at this point since you've already got your emergency kit established. All you need to do is focus on the perishable items. So add more food, add more batteries, add more matches, etc. So at this point, now that you have enough supplies that you and your family could shelter in place for 3 months, now you can start prepping for more specific scenarios that are less likely to occur. So these are going to be scenarios like a nuclear, biological, or cyber attack against the country, an EMP or solar flare, the Yellowstone supervolcano erupting, or even a worse pandemic. And some of these things that I'm listing off may sound like fantasies, but they're really not. These are all real scenarios that absolutely could play out here in America. Just the chances of them playing out are far less likely than a hurricane or a tornado or a blizzard. And that's why I think these should be the last things that you prepare for. But all of those scenarios and more absolutely could happen. There are numerous countries with the ability to strike the US with a nuclear, biological, or cyber attack. All it takes is one country to get overthrown by a dictator or one corrupt politician to sell some arms to a terrorist organization. The sun really does constantly discharge solar flares and coronal mass ejections. We just get lucky most of the time and they don't actually strike Earth. The Yellowstone supervolcano really is an active volcano and it erupts every 600 to 800,000 years. When it does erupt next, it will literally destroy half of the country and cover the other half in black ash. Now, luckily, that scenario is probably not going to play out in your lifetime or even your children's lifetimes or even your children's children's lifetimes, but the Yellowstone supervolcano absolutely will erupt again at some point in the future. So all of these scenarios absolutely could happen, but they are the least likely to happen to you in your lifetime. And this is why these are the last things that you want to start prepping for, not the first thing. The first thing you want to start prepping for is the natural disasters that are most common in your region. So if you want to see my video breaking down each individual item in FEMA's 3-day disaster kit, which it recommends all Americans have in their home at all times, click right here to check that out. Don't forget to subscribe for more prepping and survival videos, and hit that little bell icon if you want to get notified every time I upload a new video. Thanks so much for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you over in this video right here.